Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone. What's going on, guys? Oh, awesome. You've been listening since back in 2017. That's cool. Still use your TA techniques. I love to hear that. That's if I could teach a few people some extra skills, some information, then that's what this is all about at the end of the day. It's just sharing the information, helping everybody out here. Hello from Amsterdam, Kabul in the house. All right, let's give it about 2 minutes here. Thanks for joining. I'm gonna basically just be doing a chart scan here of some of the names that are, of course, leading here. We'll look at BTC and anything else that you guys want to note. So start to drop in some names. I've got a few already that I'm going to review in the stream today. So some of the names on the list here: BTC, Cardano, EOS, ETC, BCH, Link, IOTA, ICX, Mana, and then there's some requests coming in on the Slack side: XMR, Ontology, uh, BSV, Melissa. What else here? BitConnect. Yeah, we'll pass on that one. We'll take a look at some of those. Okay, some of these names. Let's see, LTC. So yeah, we'll definitely cover a few of those. Tezos, yeah, we'll look at Tezos. Man, Cardano turned out to be a nice trade on the week. We looked at this one. I've been kind of keeping an eye on this one here for the last week and a half or so, 2 weeks. But man, we're looking at it right at the live stream loss on Monday, was it? And it was right after the stream. It started to poking out here and has quite a nice little move so far here. So not a bad little move for Cardano, and it was a little bit of a laggard and started to catch up. So patience certainly paid off on that one if you were holding on to that. Cool. All right, let's do this here. So I'm gonna just start at the top, of course, and yeah, if there's some general questions, we'll take a look at that as well. Um, do we think we'll see the same market cycle as 2016? I'll talk about that a little bit. Let me make some notes on that here because I think the factors that were involved in that last market cycle are much different than what we're going to see in the next market cycle. And at a high level, one of the biggest factors that we saw in 2016, 2017 was the ICO boom, right? We don't have that anymore. And there was just kind of that huge influx of new tokens, new exchanges were popping up all over the place. The market certainly matured a little bit more, but there's certainly going to be some other factors I think will contribute to the next phase, if you will, the next kind of boom phase, crypto mania, but it's not going to be the same, right? It's going to always be a little bit different, and that's fine. I mean, that's just the way markets are. They evolved, and certainly crypto is maturing a little bit, quite a bit actually. There's a lot of maturity in the space here, so we'll look at the big names here first, looking at BTC. Going to the Node Insiders, by the way, if you're interested in joining here, the coupon code, the promotion that I have running does run through the end of January, so a few days left on that. If you're interested, they will be linked in the video notes. And so just a reminder there. But looking at the overall bull momentum index, BMI remains strong. Obviously, yesterday was another breakout day and taking out a key level. If we kind of rewind a little bit and go back to where we were looking back here off the big low from 6,400 back here, that first big resistance level that was the watch area was at 9,100 level turned out to be a good pullback zone. And then, of course, how it pulled back really was going to tell the story. And ideally, I said, if it pulls back and makes a higher daily low, ideally above some prior breakout points. I mean, and it couldn't have played out any better in terms of the pullback. We saw the pullback, almost perfectly, made a little double bottom right above this prior support zone on that 4-hour chart, and then it's just, been almost surprising at how strong it's bounced back from that point. It's just kind of off to the races after that very strong move. Went right back to that prior resistance around 9100. A brief pause here for a few candles, and then yesterday we saw big volume come in on the breakout, and now it's sitting above that zone. And so if we zoom out and go to that daily chart, we're back in this range here, and this is the next big window here to be watching. If you look left, the big kind of descending triangle that formed during the summer of 2019 after that top, that broke down, and we had that wild 2-day 40% move in October, but there was some consolidation right here between that 9100, 9500 level that could never break to the upside, and that, of course, we rolled over, and we're back in that zone, right? So we're back in that kind of resistance zone, which is also testing these prior lows, prior support levels, but the daily chart just continues to look strong, looks bullish. We had this rally, we had a very healthy pullback right to some moving averages, and we're seeing volume come back in as it pushes higher. And so all in all, the trend remains in favor of the bulls. The momentum is certainly strong. Very nice little setup here. And, at the end of the day, it's also really starting to change the trend here in terms of this broader downtrend that's in place. It's starting to change the trend of this lower lows and lower highs on the daily chart. Now we're seeing this big reversal that played out over November, December, the breakout, and so far so good, right? Higher highs, higher lows. The next big target was basically right here, right? This resistance we're looking at right now, up to around 9,500, and then above that, the psychological 10K number is your next big wall on the way up. But there's this resistance that needs to be overcome one step at a time. We certainly don't want to see it just go straight up. I think this march higher is much more sustainable. This higher highs and then pullback, little pause, breakout, it's just going to create bases along the way from which you get stronger support levels in the event of pullbacks. And so that's good news all around. It feels not quite as strong, but it feels a lot like what we were seeing off the reversals in early 19 here when we had that big push. Now this was a much stronger breakout, but you're seeing these pullbacks, pauses, rally, choppy pullback, pause. How high does it go is anyone's guess, but got to keep in mind we have the halving coming in. I don't think it's fully priced in, and certainly not after the halving. I think after the halving it's going to be even better because it's just a big fundamental change in the supply structure of Bitcoin. And if you look at the big picture, the majority of Bitcoin is already in the ecosystem, and the inflation rate is going to really start to drop here over the next couple of years, and that supply curve will begin to flatten. And just, basic economics says supply demand. If there's no more new supply, or the new supply is starting to be limited, then of course price has to go up if more people want Bitcoin. That's just the way it works. So that halving is certainly going to be a factor. Anything can happen between here and May. That's a long time in the crypto markets. Here we are in January. Remember, January was supposed to be a bearish month traditionally. Everybody was saying we'd see a big pullback. We saw a little bit of a pause, but January for the most part has been a great month for Bitcoin. If we go to the monthly chart, which I don't really usually care for, but we zoom in on that monthly chart. Maybe zoom right in, right? Turned out to be a nice little green candle reversal off of this downtrend that we've seen here on a monthly basis. So very good start to 2020. We'll see how this goes, continues. This bigger pattern continues to play out, this big symmetrical pattern here, which, in the big scheme of things, is a leaning bullish, right? A big run, couple of years of pause. That's kind of leaning for a bigger picture breakout in the larger scheme of things. Of course, in the noise, right, in the wiggles, that's a lot of movement here. So that's why I generally only care about the dailies and the weeklies sometimes, but usually daily chart's kind of a good time frame to be doing some analysis on if you're looking at the broader trend here, daily, weekly. So that's where we're at on BTC. Technically, you had this pause, which reset things, letting things go back up. The daily is back up here to the 70 mark on the RSI. The daily 10 EMA is still down here near 88.50, quickly catching up again. The 22 is at 85. And so on the downside, if it does decide to pull back a little bit from this breakout, then you want to see it kind of start holding above this zone, which would be basically yesterday's low around 8,900. That would match up with the 10 EMA. That's also above this little support. It's also above the 200-day EMA. Just a lot of that coming into play. My chart's going to get real messy here quick, but let me clear some of these lines. But a lot of that resistance, the horizontal price resistance, the big long-term moving average, price is now starting to clear that. So holding above that is ideal, would really start to set up and continue the upside momentum. I think you're going to get a lot more FOMO coming in if price starts to approach that 10K again. People are going to start going, whoa, Bitcoin 10K already. And the tweet storms will begin, the rockets, memes, and 20K will be on the radar in everybody's mind, right? So it's just going to be interesting. But near term, so what's going on near term? Are we due for a little bit of a pause? I mean, the 4-hour RSI certainly feels extended, getting a lot of volume up here, maybe some signs of distribution. After this nice double bottom we saw last weekend and the quick rally higher, I think a retracement would be healthy here. If it pulls back, the levels I'd be looking at, probably some key fib levels here, along with the daily support resistance levels I just lined out. But even if it pulls back to the 382 level, again, that's yesterday's swing low, that's the 8900 level, 9K, and then halfway down would be around 8800. So that's what I'd be looking for on the downside. Again, not necessarily bearish. I don't think there's anything bearish about this price action other than, hey, we're starting to hit the next upside target, some potential pause coming in right here, which again, in the big scheme of things, I think would be very healthy. Some up, some down, a little bit of backfilling here. Generally sets up for a bigger move later if it continues to do that, because then you get kind of that climactic run towards the end of that on the daily and the weeklies. But for now, just looking pretty good. Yesterday was a real strong move, putting in a little bit of a bull flag here on this 4-hour right above the daily 10 EMA, or the 4-hour 10 EMA. So if you see something like this, that might be a good secondary entry for that final push into 9,500 or higher. So something I'd be watching there if you're looking for some pullback entries right into these, these little prior breakout levels. So 10 EMA, 9,100 on that 4-hour chart. That would also let the RSI come in a little bit more. Again, it's pretty elevated, but doesn't mean that it has to necessarily have a big reversal. Going sideways also helps cool off the RSI. And so time or price is often what is needed. So all in all, positive for the bulls. Things are looking pretty good here. How am I trading? I'm still long Bitcoin. I did take a hedge. I was way too early apparently on Ethereum Classic. I was looking at this yesterday. It started to really pull in. Where was it? Back in here. And I caught a good fill. I came in from the USD side, and then I got stopped out. It didn't work out. But I caught a good fill on the downside with Ethereum. Where was it? It was right here. It was around 11:30 or something, because I saw this big reversal in the shorter time frames. BTC started to sell off a little bit, and I thought, my reasoning was, if Bitcoin pulls back, Ethereum Classic may finally give us a decent pullback. And the trade was green for a couple of hours, but then it just started to rally once Bitcoin broke out. It was time to get out of the way. And man, here we go. Ethereum Classic over $12 just continues to go on its monster run. If you look at the daily chart, had that climactic move a few weeks back, really pulled back sharply, but then held the moving averages and now popping higher. There is a little bit of a divergence forming. So if this most recent high forms a top there, that's going to really start to look bearish here. A little bit of a double top with the bearish divergence showing up here, both on the RSI and the MACD. So that's something I'd be watching. So far, it's probably the strongest name out there right now relative to BTC, and just continues to march higher. The dips continue to be bought up, but it's definitely feeling a little cautious here. So I'm still keeping an eye on it for a potential move to the downside. Definitely one I'm watching, but still long the BTC. Cardano was another one that worked out really nice. Looking at the shorter time frame, this is Cardano BTC pair. You know, we were watching this consolidation secondary setup. Again, the volume started to come in and had a nice little push. And I believe that was, let me see, it's not quite the next target. It came pretty close here. I'm going to go to the daily chart. So the next big target on the daily chart here, I'm going to move this up. If you look left, that July swing high, it's almost there. It's around 635 to 650 on the SAT. And, you know, yesterday's high or this morning's high took it to about 614 on some pretty good volume on the way up. So, you know, it's in no man's land right here. A little bit of a middle zone, but we're certainly approaching that next target on the BTC pair. On the USD side, go to that one there. You certainly have reached the next target, which was right around that 5.5 cent level here. And then above that, you're looking at, you know, about 6.3. So all in all, good stuff. But the way I like to look at these setups, these trades, is I'm not too inclined to chase the breakouts as much as I'm still preferring secondary entries or pullbacks, little throwbacks. And, you know, you had one on Cardano. So if we go back to the BTC pair, you know, it had that breakout. Let's just dial it in here pretty good. So I had the breakout on Monday, shortly after doing the live stream. It started to look pretty good. And then into Monday's evening time or my afternoon, it pulled right back into the zone. And those are like ideal entries. Those are good throwbacks because then you don't have to give it much room to the downside when you're doing, you know, the pullback entries. And it wasn't there very long. I mean, a couple hours, and then look at the next 2 hourly candles just zoomed right out of there, broke away with some good volume. And so those little pullbacks make for a better, you know, a better entry if you're playing it that tight. Just because, you know, these names tend to be pretty choppy anyway, up and down. But if the broader trend is moving in your favor, you're kind of looking for those little pullbacks. You know, and it works until it doesn't, right? Eventually, one of those pullbacks will kind of be the one that doesn't hold, and then price starts to pull in and start changing the trend. But on that initial breakout, that's how I like to look at those. If it starts to push higher and then it pulls in with lower volume, then those are ideal scenarios. But for now, still moving higher, kind of in the middle ground here. It could pull back to about 580 if it wanted to here and still be fine. But again, next major targets are just above, and on the USD side, similar. So good to see Cardano finally playing some catch up here. It was kind of a laggard for a while, but had this nice consolidation and a couple of good days of breaking out here. Another one that's still on the radar is EOS. Again, EOS had that big push here, has been consolidating, did hit the targets on the USD side, and it's looking like it wants to push higher here, but I'm just watching it for now. I think I posted this chart in the Slack group yesterday or 2 days ago. But, you know, we had this rally, and of course the target was around 410 for me. And I mean, it nailed that target almost perfectly, pausing. Try to get above it again here today, pausing, but could be setting up for another secondary breakout here if it can get over that 410 mark on the USD side. And then above that, you're looking at around 450, 445 or so as the next leg higher on the target there. So going back to EOS BTC, you know, the bigger target that I was looking for was, you know, 4,700 on the Satoshi level, but I was trading this one from the USD side. That one just looked clearer for me. It was this breakout on the BTC pair that put it on the radar. I think that was a great breakout, and I missed this pullback entry, but then it's set up on the USD side, so I jumped in from that angle and played it for a swing up to that first target. And so for now, I still think it's worth watching. I think the higher time frame still looks really good, and that's just because of this broader breakout from this, you know, long time resistance level here around 3,900, 4,000 on the BTC pair. And, you know, the big picture is starting to look positive for some of these alts after putting in this long time low, right? EOS had that same setup, Cardano has that same setup, Bitcoin Cash had that same setup and broke out. But, you know, this could just be the beginning innings of what turns out to be a bigger swing on the weekly charts, right? So that's what I'm watching here going into the start of this new year is like a lot of these alts are looking like they're ripe for some, longer term moves, right? More like buy and hold type of moves where, you're not really looking at the 4-hour chart so much as you're looking at the daily and the weeklies and just trying to jump on those trends for a bigger, more sustained move, right? And so I'm starting to look at a lot of that because these names are really setting up. They're putting in these longer term lows. Ethereum, on the other hand, not quite there. It's trying, but it's certainly been the laggard, still making lower lows, lower highs on these weeklies. If we do zoom in here on the 4-hour chart, there was that double bottom that's still in play. It's still kind of in this zone, but it's been the laggard. It just hasn't played the catch up yet, and that's kind of reflected in the overall altcoin market, right? It's very kind of pick your name still. We're seeing a lot of rotation. You'll get a name that's strong for a week or two, and then it kind of rotates, and you get the next couple of names that are strong. And so that's why I'm still still in the trading mode, right? Still kind of taking the profits and waiting for the next setup, waiting for the next breakout, looking at BTC is kind of the guiding indicator. But when I start to see those weekly charts really start setting up and looking good, I'm going to be more inclined to allocate a bigger portion to the not trading side of things and just letting things ride a little bit longer, right? And I think, just this is me thinking out loud, my guess. I think after the halving, we'll see that. I think we're going to see a little bit more of that kind of broader altcoin sustained moves. Let me take a swig of some water here. The allergies are kicking up, and probably can't hear my voice, hopefully, but I'm feeling a little scratchy there. Okay, so we looked at BTC, we looked at Cardano, EOS. Let's look at, let's take a quick look at ETC again. I'm looking at it from the USD side. Just keep in mind, there's that potential bearish divergence showing up here. It's definitely extended again. Went to almost $13 here just recently, and this is just a powerful move, man. Just a lot of stuff going on there, but yeah, you're right. I'm looking at BTC here. If it does pull in, and pull in is all relative, right? Some people will look at a $200 pull in as like, whoa, it's crashing, and others, it just depends on how you're trading it. If you're using margin and all that stuff. Oh, that's the 5-minute chart. Let's not look at that. But the 30-minute chart here is kind of like signaling maybe a little bit of a drop down to that 9100, and even down to 8900 wouldn't be that big of a deal. So that 4-hour chart, potential bull flag forming. Keep an eye on that for that reversal and the volume to start coming in if it pushes higher again. So, but remember, crypto, stairs up, elevators down. that's how we roll. Oh, good times. But yeah, it's been good. So EOS has been all right. This week was setting up. Cardano is probably the better one. ETC, of course, if you've been on that. Next on the list here, BCH continues to hold up relatively well versus Bitcoin, trading in tandem here. Just kind of getting a little volatile here near the highs, kind of choppy on this daily chart. So, flashing some potential cautionary flags. When I see this really wide and loose action at the top, it sometimes signals some distribution here. Looking at it from the USD side, pretty much just tracking with Bitcoin. I mean, it's holding up well. You had that double bottom here, the big rally, the pause, the breakout yesterday, but it is starting to pull back here. Did come right back to this prior high here around that $400 mark. But, if we zoom out here on the daily chart, that's above this prior resistance was back here at 370, and the next major high is up here at 480. So you're kind of in that middle zone, but it is looking like maybe a double top. If this is going to double top, this is how it'll play out. You'll see it drop down into this 22 moving average, maybe bounce a little bit, and then it can't hold, and then obviously confirmation would be a break of this neckline around 306, but that's a big move down from here to there. So I'd be watching the lower time frames if you're looking at a double top play, maybe a 4-hour chart, and waiting for like 360 to crack. And then at that point, you can look at a potential swing down to the neckline. So what I mean by that is, let's say 360 cracks, that's your entry point, unless you get in here with a really tight stop at 400. Then your target would be, first target is always the actual neckline of the double bottom, because generally you can see a bounce from that point. And so I like to kind of book a little there. So if you jumped in here, I wouldn't give it much more than 400 personally. You might get wicked out, but you're betting against the trend still, so you got to play it tight. And going down to the neckline, which is closer to 300, 305, that's about a 2.5 hour multiple. Gives you about a 17% downside with a 7% upside risk, right? If you're looking at the short side. And then, of course, if it really starts to lose it and it's a big double top, then you look at a couple of ways to target on the downside. You can do measured moves. You can do some horizontal, levels, like maybe it drops to here, maybe it drops to here, right? And so at that point, it's a different ball game. You're looking at a longer hold, but that'd be a big move if it double tops. I'm not saying it's going to, but I'm always looking at 2 or 3 different scenarios when I'm looking at these charts going, that could double top. Of course, it could just kind of chop and flop, go sideways, set up for a breakout over 400. Just there's a lot of ways to do this. More than one way to skin this cat. I don't know where that saying came from. I've never really liked it. I'm like, who's going to skin a cat? Anyway, let's see here. Mike in the house. FOMO Mike. What else we got going on here? So let me see. There was a question here. You think you'll see the alts boom until the end of April, and then BTC pump before the halving? Yeah, that's kind of the inverse scenario of what I just said, and that could certainly happen. But right now, the alts don't feel like an all across the board rally. You're seeing it in a lot of the bigger cap names, which is generally a good sign, and that's causing this BTC dominance to dip a little bit here near term, but it is finding a short-term low around 66. If you look at the altcoin markets, the total market cap here is breaking out, but obviously that looks a lot like Bitcoin. If you look at the market cap excluding Bitcoin, since the start of the year, you've seen a nice little rally, but we are coming into, some resistance here on the broader crypto market cap, which excludes BTC. And of course, if you were to chart like the top 5 or 6 market cap names, it's going to look a lot like this. I mean, those top names just really dominate this chart. And so, you combine things like BCH and XRP and ETH and EOS and Litecoin, and you kind of get this sort of chart, which is interesting that it's coming into this level here. If it breaks over, that, what is that, $81.5 billion mark, then you can have a nice little alt run, up until around here, 92 billion, 93 billion, right? So that'd be a nice little break, but wouldn't surprise me to see a pause here and BTC kind of dominate a little bit. What would cause that would be not a substantial, but a pretty decent pullback. I think if we see a decent pullback in Bitcoin, you'll see some of these recent alt gains kind of move back into BTC as a hedge, and you'll see the BTC dominance pop a little bit there. So just some thoughts. Of course, I mean, I generally don't make any trading decisions based around the dominance chart or the market cap chart. It's just kind of a nice little data point. At the end of the day, I'm always looking at what's BTC doing, what names are trending versus Bitcoin, and I just kind of look at those names and take them one swing at a time, right? So I don't generally look at, what's the broader market. I mean, if you're just kind of buying and holding and spreading it across several names, then yeah, that makes sense to do that. But I tend to be a little bit more, just kind of a handful of names at a time when I'm trading. I don't generally have like 10 trades open at once or anything. So a few names here: Syscoin, of course, Ethereum Classic. Icon had a nice move. Cardano, we've seen that. Tron, let's look at a few of those here. And I've got a few more on the list here if you're waiting. What else? ETC, BCH, IOTA, Link, ICX, Mana, and then a few requests came in: XMR, Ontology, BSV, LTC, Tezos. Let me see here. Just checking those messages to make sure there was any other requests. Cool. All right, so let's keep going. I'll try to move it here and move it along. Yeah, I'll add BNB on the list. ZIL. I haven't looked at ZIL in a while. Let's go take a look at ZIL. All right, let's go. Let's go. I'm trying to move it along here. What were we on here? BCH. We looked at that. Link. Now, Link is interesting here. So, Link BTC hasn't really, it was setting out for a potential move higher, but hasn't really played along with many of these other names. I was looking at the bot status here today, which was interesting because I have it sorted here. So, what I have it sorted by is this middle column, the bull momentum matrix rating. And, there's a few names, obviously, that are still in the bullish camp, some kind of yellow, cautious, which is just flat. And then Cardano is strong. And then look at all these names versus BTC that are in the weak camp, right? And this is the big cap names versus Bitcoin pairs. A few of them are still, they're long on a few time frames. But I was interesting to see that, Link, 4-hour trading bot is long, it's flat on the daily, and the matrix is weak. So just kind of some mixed signals there showing that, underlying technicals in Link versus Bitcoin were still not there, and in fact it was signaling weak. And so what I'd like to see on Link is a break of this pattern, right? It's still making lower lows, lower highs on the short term right here, just for the last week or so. Starting to turn that would be positive. But if you look at the moving averages, they're still kind of trending lower here near term. It is starting to test this prior support. And so this is kind of like decision time, right? This would be a good place for Link to bounce off of if it's going to, break above this trend line here. This would be an ideal place for it to start taking off. Otherwise, then next target down is these prior lows back in here. So it's a little bit mixed. Looking at it from the USD side, now it's going to look a lot stronger because of what Bitcoin's been doing. But, it's still, it was kind of setting out for a potential breakout here. It did have, excuse me, it did have a nice little pop here off of the, this little flag and moving averages. So on the USD side, it's trending up, still looks well, but I think that's largely Bitcoin driven. Looking at it from the BTC pair, it's not quite outperforming, right? Like Cardano, for example. So just depends on which side you're coming in from. I'm always looking at the BTC pairs just to see, just because I watch Bitcoin so much, it's like, well, is it easier for me to just watch Bitcoin and hold BTC, or should I trade some of these alts and kind of outperform Bitcoin if Bitcoin's going up, right? And so that's why I look at the BTC pairs so much, because if those names look like they're about to break out versus Bitcoin and I think Bitcoin looks strong, then I'll jump on some of those alts, right, and kind of get that extra on the way up. Link, IOTA BTC here. Nice little breakout yesterday, man. Look at that. Big volume coming in on that push above range. Just kind of sitting tight here, maybe setting up another flag. And this one's just been marching along nicely. If you look at this daily chart, had that really strong move here a few weeks back, and then most of last week just sat tight. Just put in a little bit of a flag here versus Bitcoin on the daily, right above the 10 EMA. Never really closed below it. Did wick a few times under, but all in all, good stuff. Popping higher, and then basically just getting into this next zone right up in here really quick. But IOTA, man, not a bad little move off the bottom. It's already had a pretty decent move, though. Let me go back to the daily, sorry. How far? And this one can move quick. I've noticed this is a fast mover when it goes. It's about 42% off the lows. Not too shabby. And then, of course, your next big swing, if you're looking at the higher, longer holds, about 3,500 on the BTC pair. Now, IOTA USD. IOTA. There we go. IOTA USD pretty much hits that next target already. So, in this 30-cent range is where was that first major target, and then above that, don't have a lot of resistance up until about 36 to 39, and so if it keeps going, but it is feeling a little extended. Is there a divergence showing up here? No, not really. The RSI is way up there, on the daily, but there's not any divergence. The MACD is showing a little bit of a divergence here. But the trend is your friend. And again, as I said at the beginning, I like the pullbacks more than I like chasing breakouts right now. Unless you get a really clean, tight range and then you can catch the breakout early, I generally will prefer throwback entries, which you don't always get, but if you do, it just makes for a better risk-reward entry. All right, so that's IOTA, ICX, icon, following up on the prior move it had here over the weekend, just continues to march higher, taking out target after target. Big spike up, pulling right back, bouncing here a little bit. If we go to that 4-hour chart, you know, I'm curious to see how this one plays out. Is this a nice secondary pullback and it's about to get going again, right above resistance, right above that 2,000 sat level? So, I mean, that turned out to be a good place, but is this going to just make a lower high and then start rolling over? Icon is just a tough one to trade. It trends nicely when you catch them, but you know, it's always like there's still people waiting to sell it. If you look at the longer term chart, I mean, it's just not pretty. There's just a lot of resistance along the way. There's a ton of bag holders, and it's just crazy to see that chart. But near term showing some life. I haven't really followed this project a lot in recent months, so I'm not sure if something project wise is related. I was watching it very closely for a long time. Was doing some really interesting things. I thought it was a really great project, a good potential there, but I haven't followed it too closely recently. I wonder if any of this is news or project driven. Some of you guys know, go ahead and let us know. That's ICX. Another project that I am following closely right now, which I am liking, is Mana, the Decentraland. They are going to go public in February with their basically with the Decentraland. I was checking it out here recently because I had the invite sent to me, so I can, you know, the early access. I was able to kind of walk around Decentraland and check out some of the cool things being built on there and all that. It's gonna be interesting to see how it works out, but you know, I think it's gonna get a little bit more attention here after February and kind of into Q2 as things start to really shape up there. The land prices for Decentraland are really starting to spike right now. I think there's a lot of kind of FOMO coming in. But this one's interesting to watch here. Maybe a little bit of a wedge, maybe a little bit of a downtrend, but really the upper trend line is what I'd be watching here for a potential break above, you know, some move there. But on the USD side, and I'll go Hubi, they tend to have more volume. You know, it's kind of just been in this little holding pattern here. You know, basically between 3 cents and 3.7 cents or so. And it moves pretty wild. I mean, this certainly has, you can tell right here, just some big spikes. But bigger time frame, right? I'm looking at, let me go here. I'm looking at like 4 to 6 cents on the higher time frames. Let me see, how's Polo look? Yeah, you can give you some. So you got like 4.5 cents back here, and then you got a big swing at 6.5. And would not surprise me if it can start to move up to hit those levels there, you know, on the, you know, in the next couple of months is really what I'm talking about here. On the way down, you know, that 3 cent is kind of your first really strong support, and then below that, I mean, about 2.5. Don't really want to see it dip much below that. But pretty interesting project here, something I'm watching, a little bit more of a fundamental play as opposed to the chart looks wonderful. It's just kind of more of a what's going to happen after they launch and all that stuff. But watch this one near term for some of those breaks above that downtrend. All right, some of the names coming in here. XMR. Monero. Interesting little range being set up here at the lows. You know, it's not bad. I kind of like this setup here. Just when you have these, you know, these ranges being built right below a support zone. You know, we had that big run here a couple of weeks back right to that level, and a lot of chop and flop near that zone, but it's still right below it, and you know, it's ripe for a push out of range and setting up for another leg up. So certainly has had enough time to pause. What is that, 2 weeks now of kind of reset, letting the technicals cool off. I'd be watching this one here. Go to that 4-hour chart. You got this higher low pattern being formed, so maybe the trend line is kind of your first support, and then horizontal price would be your max, right? So about 7,000 Satoshi. Breaking below 7,000 doesn't quite look too good after that, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a retest of the recent lows. But interesting setup here. Yeah, I definitely would be watching this one here. How's it look on the USD side? XMR USD still marching higher. Of course, a lot of these names, like I said, look much better on the USD pair because of what Bitcoin's done, especially if they've gone sideways versus Bitcoin. That means they're holding par, and if Bitcoin's moving up, then they're moving up along and then enjoying the ride. So that's exactly what you're seeing here. I mean, look at this chart on the 4-hour. Looks very similar to the Bitcoin chart, right? We had the little double bottom after the pullback, and then just pretty much steady trend higher since then. So Monero looking pretty good here, closing in on 70 bucks. Above 70, where's your next level? Actually, that's a pretty significant inflection point there. You know, there's your $71 mark. It was prior resistance, has been support a few times. So yeah, getting above 70, you're looking at very quickly 76, 80 bucks as your next swing up. Monero. Speaking of Monero, let's go to Zcash real quick. I know Zen's running, Zcoin's running. Let's see here, Zcash, interesting. Did finally break above this downtrend we were looking at on Monday. Popping higher, looks to get some momentum. Maybe you have a, you know, kind of a sympathy play here. Monero, Zcash, some of these names starting to play in tandem again. XZC, Zcoin. Zcoin was on the move. We saw this on the radar. It was on the trending list names on Monday. Pulled right back, and I mean, this is my markups from prior. I'm just kind of looking at these downtrends, and I said if it breaks above that, that's kind of a good signal. And look at it, broke above. Then it gives you this throwback entry right to the trend line / prior support, and then quick pop off that level. So nice little move there. Whoops, not that guy here. How much of a move was that? Very quickly, 30%. Nice. Very, very nice. All right. What was the other one? Oh, Dash. Got to keep an eye on Dash. Dash could break out along with these other names here. Look, it's still going sideways. Starting to get really tight and symmetrical here. Dash has got to be high on the radar right now. I'm going to drop it on the top of my list here. On Monday, my top name was Cardano. Last week, it was EOS. I'm going to keep an eye on Dash here. How's it look on the USD side? Yeah, pretty strong setup. You know, you've got that double support there, and then you're starting to kind of edge out above 118 here, so 119. It's worth watching, no doubt. There was another name I wanted to pull up in that same camp here. What is it? Somebody's asking for Zen. Zen. Decision time for Zen. I don't know why I drew that long arrow, but that's a nice little trend line that we got going on here. And it is clearly right below this resistance point. Yeah, that's decision time for Zen. Is it going to break trend and roll over here? Or is it about to break out? It's a good breakout candidate. But, man, it's had a move already. Zen. All right. So let me see here. We covered that one, that one, that one. Let me go through the list here. Ontology. Might as well throw Neo in there after that. Ontology. Whoa, what's with the volume here? That's a nice little power pivot on the volume. Did it show up on the radar? Let's go to the alerts. Let me take off these oversolds. Actually, I'm just going to do power pivots only. Take off overbots. FTC, Decred, Zcoin, RLC. There's Ontology 20 hours ago. Gave us a power pivot there. Another one back here 2 days ago. It's flashing. It's definitely flashing some signals here. So that daily chart looks pretty interesting. Came right back here, starting to make a higher low. And it's put in a pretty tight range. I know it's hard to see on the screen here because I got it zoomed out, but pretty tight range here for about a week. You know, so I'd be watching this one here. Maybe some follow through to the upside. A little bit of a breakout. The volume there is compelling. You got to pay attention when you see volume like that. You just got to pay attention. That's interesting there. Neo. Neo, whatever happened to Neo? Didn't quite hold that breakout. I was trying to move, and I was watching this one. It's just been sitting tight. We looked at this one. I actually liked the way it looked on Monday. I was thinking this is actually not a bad setup here for a potential bounce off support and then a push higher. And no dice, not going to happen. And in fact, I was watching the bot status, and Neo was in the weak camp. I was like, oh, really? Neo is weak. And the 4-hour bot status is actually short Neo right now. Daily's flat. BSV. I'm gonna go to the dollar chart on this bad boy here. Nope. Still hasn't quite broken that trend. It's gonna go in here. Let me clear this bottom line here. This was my markup for Monday. We looked at this guy. This is kind of the line in the sand that I'd be watching, right? This slight downtrend. It's almost sideways right at this point. It's certainly starting to go symmetrical now. It's definitely at a decision point here, so I'd be watching this one. Had that big run up and just kind of really sitting tight here on this 4-hour chart, starting to consolidate. You know, the lower level I'd be watching 260 on the upside, about 315, 310 maybe. Breaking out of that range could be the next leg up, but let me go to the daily chart again. Yeah, well, this is always interesting when you see the big kind of the inside pattern, right? You have this symmetrical pattern forming within this insane daily candle. It's a little confusing sometimes. It's like you have this, what do you make with this? And the way I usually do that, honestly, is I discount that while the pattern's forming, and I look at this as just, okay, this is just a symmetrical setup. And then when it starts to move out, let's say it breaks to the upside, then this becomes a factor again back here. But for now, you know, so like for me, the breakout wouldn't be getting over 424. The breakout is down here at 315 or so. But it's still holding the moving averages, still holding up on the daily. But I don't know. This one's a tough call because a lot of the hype and stuff around it. Litecoin. I'm going to go Litecoin USD because I do like the way this is setting up. Somebody asked, was this a cup and handle? EOS had a similar setup. I would argue, yeah. I mean, you got this pullback forming a little bit of a handle right here. And so like an aggressive early entry would have been on a break above the trend line, so like 3 days ago. Otherwise, it's just a straight breakout over $64 is kind of your and even lower, maybe 63, right? But you're basically just watching this horizontal resistance and it's testing it again, potentially trying to break out. Above that, then $70, $78, 77, that's kind of your next big wall. So could have a nice little run if it breaks out. How's it look on the BTC pair? Still living below the wall, pulling back here, but not too shabby. I think it's a healthy pullback after the big run it had off the lows. Yeah, we looked at Dash just now. I really like Dash here for a watch. It's coiling up. It's definitely worth watching. Oops. So, oops, sorry. There we go. So Litecoin, let's zoom in on Litecoin because this is, kind of an early signal would be getting out of this guy here, taking out that higher high, higher low pattern, lower high. And it is lining up with a little bit of support, not a lot, but I think getting over, call it 6,700, maybe 68 if you wanted to really be waiting for that, then it starts to set up for a run over resistance. And in fact, I'm going to drop an alert here. I'm going to watch this guy. If it does decide to take out that level, that's the level to be watching. Tezos, man, look at that. Tezos went right to the target. And, the setup is when you go to the target, maybe there's a pullback and then it finally pushes higher, just like Bitcoin did. But this one didn't. It's like it's done. Pulls back, breaks support, tries to rally, can't get above that support again, starting to roll back here a little bit. So far, gonna have to wait on that guy. It was a nice trade here for about a week. I mean, not a monster trade, but it was certainly a nice little. And this was a nice little counter trend trade because Bitcoin was dropping for a lot of this, and so it made for a nice little hedge trade. But gonna have to wait on that one for now. What's the bot status saying? I think I have T's on the list. Yeah, I do. Flat and flat. BTC is weak. BMI, I mean. All right, let's go here. A few more names. BNB. Still not doing it versus Bitcoin. Still trending lower. And in fact, since we looked at it on Monday, finally did break that support and just trending lower here. So, you know, until it turns around or finds a nice, like, if you see a big, like a bullish engulfing candle on strong volume, then that could signal, all right, this is probably done for now. Especially if it does it around these support levels, you know, then that's ideal. But until then, it's just, you know, it's not outperforming Bitcoin. The USD side, I'm sure it looks much better. You know, it has gone from 16 to 18. But again, that's because of Bitcoin, and most of these charts have a real similar pattern. They're going sideways. But, you know, with that being said, if it does start to move out of this 1850 range on the USD pair, then that could be a good setup for it to also start outperforming on Bitcoin side, because then that's a big breakout on this pair. You can see a lot of covering breakout traders kind of looking at that. And then what that would translate to is finally seeing that reversal in the BTC pair. So, yeah, I'd probably be watching the USD side more on this guy. 1850, that's kind of your number. 1850 holding above that on BNB, and it's probably going to be in play. ZIL, there's a name from yesteryear. Looking at the Zilliqa. Okay, the long-term chart is kind of just still gone flat here. You are seeing a little bit of an outside day here, but I mean, in the big scheme of things, it's nothing, right? There's no volume yet, so. But yeah, I mean, I guess if you're liking this volume or this support zone coming in, potential reversal coming in today. These are tough names to trade, but if it gets out of that range, what is that, 62 sat? Then maybe you see a nice little run on ZIL. Again, not a project I've kept up with recently, so I don't know if there's a fundamental factor that could be driving that, or, you know, something project related, but it's not quite there yet, especially not in the bigger chart. I mean, if you look at the longer term chart, it's yeesh. I mean, at least it's going sideways now. It's going flat, not just dropping, but they'll come back to life, some of those. BAT, basic attention. The BAT has not tried getting out of that range, couldn't. It looks like it's breaking down here a little bit. Did finally lose this support on BAT. So, you know, you're kind of in no man's land here with BAT. I mean, it could pause here. It could drop down to these lows. I think big picture, though, you definitely want to see it hold above, what is that, 22.5 or so, just because that really starts to take out this daily low. And this looks like lower low, lower highs, and now you're going to really start to break down. At that point, you're looking at 2050 as your next downside target. If it does that, in fact, I'd probably do like a little measured move on this if it broke out to the downside. And then I'd be saying something like that, which is about 1900, call it. So need to see it bounce here and reclaim this line. And one for you basketball aficionados. Harmony, looking at Harmony. Yeah, again, you know, so what I look at when I see these charts, the first thing I look at, obviously the price tells you a lot, but I mean, if you're just looking at, let me hide the price. I mean, look at these indicators, right? That's why I use the moving average pairs. You see the drop in the moving average, you get this, you know, this bearish crossover here. The short-term moving average is living below it, tries to move above, just can't. The broader trend is still much downwards, And if you put price back on there, you know, you can see price is predominantly trading below those moving averages. And so until that changes, you know, the trend is not your friend. You're losing ground versus BTC here on this guy. And, you know, especially after this big candle, right? This is the Matic candle, by the way, right? I mean, Matic had that shakedown, and a lot of other names, you know, Harmony, Fed, some of these other names that were kind of following suit with Matic, they just haven't recovered from that yet. I mean, they're just, that was the drop, and you're seeing the kind of the trickle down still. Speaking of Matic, let's go look at that. Yeah, I mean, you had the big spike here, and at least Matic's still holding lows, but it's still not quite bounced yet. All right, let's take a pause, go back to BTC here. I see a few more names coming in. I'll definitely look at some of those. Let me make a note here on that. Digibyte, Zen, Raven. I think we looked at Zen. I'll take a look at it again. And I think I got them all. I'm looking at the comments. Zurich in the house. Lisbon. Germany. Got the European friends here today. ENG. Is that Enigma? That's not Engine. Engine's ENJ. Yeah. All right. We'll take a look at that one. BTC here. Going back to the Bitcoin chart. So near term, I mean, it's fine. Daily chart's moving higher. Things are positive. Little bull flag potentially forming on this 4-hour chart. Next major resistance, if it continues to march higher, is, you know, just above that 9,500 level. And then after that, you know, you're kind of in this open range here between 95 and 10K, maybe even higher. I mean, this was a pretty wild move. Didn't stay there very long, so it was pretty short-lived. And the bulls just remain in control, man. The momentum continues to the upside. This is an interesting zone here again. It is finally getting over that 9,100 level, the 200-day moving average. So if it starts to kind of hold here and move higher, I mean, this is, you couldn't ask for more, right? That'd be great. If it just pauses, you had this pullback, you had the strong bounce off there. If it kind of sits tight here above, you know, even 8,900, right? Above 8,900 would be just fine. And just, you know, the long side continues to work out well. Again, I'm not overly bearish. Is it due for a pause? Again, maybe 4-hour looks like a bull flag. Maybe that was the pause and that's it. I'm not necessarily shorting this just yet. Are we gonna BART here? Some people think so, but just got to go with it until it changes. Volume on this pullback's been lighter too. It's been pretty quiet on the downside. So all in all, not too shabby. Looking good from the daily chart still. Let's do a few more here, and then I'm going to call it a stream. Digibyte. Sorry, I'll do that on Bittrex. TGB. Digibyte. Yeah, it's still dropping. Still making the lower lows, the lower highs. Looks like it's about to take out this long time. Kind of already did this long time support, so interesting. Not too strong of a name, man. All-time lows. This is basically almost to all-time lows. You're going back to 2017. Crazy, huh? Zen. I think we looked at that one. Yeah, we looked at Zen. The deal with Zen is, it's decision time. You get this trend line here. You've got the resistance right there. You've had several weeks of pause now. It's make or break time. Raven. Let me go to the 4-hour chart here and clear some of this mess. Did have a nice little short-lived counter trend rally here, but it looks like it's finally rolling over again. Couldn't quite break above, what is that, 315. They've just seen a pretty steady march downward here the last few days. Again, this is versus Bitcoin, and that's because a lot of these alts are just not keeping up versus Bitcoin yet. It's very selective. You gotta be picky. There's a lot of rotation. They'll be strong for a couple of days, and then they pause, pull back, you know, and then you get the next crop. Speaking of which, there's Tron. Tron had that nice little push. It still looks good. Had that breakout of this little pattern here, trying to hold up a lot of wicks over the top, you know, but it's still holding up above this level. So I think that's a great candidate to watch too. Tron, some potential move there. Dash is one I'm definitely watching there, but I'm going to put Tron on the list as another potential catch-up play here. TRX, Tesla. Oh man, yeah. Tesla's going to be interesting. Apple killed earnings, and I traded Apple a little bit here this morning. AMD, Starbucks. I traded those to the downside actually, and had a nice little morning. But yeah, Tesla, man, it's hard to bet against Tesla. That stock is so volatile. It's a great trading stock. Oh, Tesla. Tron USD also bouncing off the 10 EMA, so on the 4-hour. Yeah, not too bad. All right. And a few more here. ENG. I haven't looked at this guy in a while. Enigma. Where's the low? Where's the bottom? Man, it's really starting to accelerate to the downside. Hitting oversold conditions on the daily, but there's really, I mean, you just broke the last support here. And so we're seeing the last couple days breaking down. You're back into this range now. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a no man's land here. There's not a pretty chart. You know, it got real toppy here, and this was kind of the kill candle right there. You know, finally breaks down and couldn't bounce, and just so far has been trending lower since here. Had a nice little rally though for a few weeks there in November. Kind of re-giving it all back. Oops. Whatever happened to Engine? Okay. All right. Joe Legend, ICX. Only because you are a legend. ICX looking nice. Yeah, ICX has been one of the strong ones. Had that good pullback. Real strong move over the weekend, given, you know, quick pullback, and now it's starting to bounce with some good volume on this last candle here. Going to the daily chart. Man, very strong. Yeah, after that breakout, it's been moving up pretty nicely here, and you know, kind of hitting this next zone. You're in a really wide zone now. It's, you know, up here's your next major target down to where we're at now. So anywhere along the lines between here and 2,500. Let's go take a look at some of these names here real quick. Looking at Apple. It's amazing the market cap of Apple too, just marching higher. I mean, their wearables division, as they call it, right? Their watch and their, you know, their AirPods. I mean, the amount of revenue they made in Q4 on just those products is incredible. I mean, most other companies dream of making that in a year, and these handful of products did that for Apple. It's just amazing. They just continue to dominate. But yeah, just wild chart. I mean, this chart is just crazy. Look at this. From the big tech sell-off we saw at the end of 19, you know, last year the price of Apple nearly doubled from the lows, and you know, it just continues to go up 125% since that point. If you take off the log chart, of course, you know, you got to factor in log charts, but if you take that off, man, look at this thing. It's starting to look a little parabolic there on the weekly. Let's go to the weeklies there. It's like, woo, starting to really accelerate. Tesla. Oh, man, I don't know. I think there's a lot of bears on Tesla trying to fade this rally that we've seen here recently. I have to wonder how much of this is already baked into the earnings, right? The number of cars sold. I think China's going to be a big factor because that's the next real big market for Tesla. And if the China story is is really good or surprises people to to the upside, then Tesla 600 will look like a rear view mirror. So, oh man, it's amazing. Look at that, once it took out that major wall here, it was battling that 380 level for so long. And this was some great trading zone right here, because it was like up, down, up, down. You could have traded that all day long. And man, this was the infamous, I've got funding lined up at 420, and then the shorts, and all the craziness, the SEC subpoenas, and then after that, boom, off to the races. Is Dash on the move here? Let's go look at Dash. I'm liking the Dash. Dash, oh yeah. Starting to show some life coming out of that trend here. Look at the 1 hour chart showing some volume. Dash looks good. Yep. Clearing range here on the USD side. How much time's left on this hourly candle? This 4 hour just, it's got 3 hours left. Plenty of time. Plenty of time. Good stuff. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay. Well, my friends, I think that's going to do it for today. We looked at quite a few names. It's certainly a mixed bag out there in the markets. Yeah, there's some good stuff. There's some things setting up, but I think you still got to be picky in terms of which names to focus on. Let's see what we got here. ETN on the move. FX. We got Zcoin on the move. Icon. I'm sure we'll see a Dash on the move here soon. So, all right. Very good. All right, guys. Hey, appreciate the likes. Appreciate the comments as always. And we'll see you on the next one. Take care.